Hey everybody, welcome to the preface or the introduction to Ulysses by Jamesjoyce. Now the purview of this series is that I'm going to go chapter by chapter and provide an analysis and a plot summary of what is going on in Ulysses. Now the reason for this, when I first read the book, I had to start it multiple times and I did not do it in an academic environment, so I had nobody assisting me across the way. I remember reading a Michael Chabon article about Finnegan's Wake and how he mentions that his teacher, walked with him step by step through Ulysses, explained everything, explained all the streets of Dublin, and I think that's a really great way to go about a really difficult book like this. So I'm doing a secondary reading of this, and I figure so that way people who are not in that academic environment, why not provide a reading guide for them? That way they can go along and understand Ulysses without having to skip a whole bunch of stuff or not understand a lot of the text of it and just get more out of the reading experience. So this episode, I'm just going to talk about some basic things with it. So what you want to understand is the main thematic core of Ulysses is what makes it such a strong part of the canon of the modernist genre is that the universal in the particular. Now what I mean by that is James Joyce focuses on Dublin, Ireland, and he says it in the book of Dubliners, or when he talking about Dubliners, is that when I talk about Dublin, I'm talking about everyone. I'm talking about the whole world, and that kind of makes sense because even reading this book, there's a lot of modern issues that we are still dealing with today, even though this takes place in the early 1900s in Ireland. So a lot of what you're going to be seeing is just very, very particular character traits or intimate details of people's lives, and where he's trying to accomplish with that, again, is just capturing that universal, talking about these people, sharing these experiences that are almost cross-cultural. Also, you have to remember that this book was written, I believe, before the First or Second World War, and World War II actually, and he was concerned that Dublin was not going to exist. So he really wanted to capture the essence of Dublin and all the particulars. There's information out there that he actually wrote a letter to a relative to see if one fence in a particular part of Dublin, because at the time he was writing this, he was living in Paris or London, and if it could be jumped, just offhand. And the person responded back yes, it could. And the funny thing about that is that that's how particular he was to detail in this book, and probably not going to get a detailed analysis of Dublin in any other piece of literature. Now, another aspect of this is that he really focuses on the stream of consciousness writing style. Now, little thing, we'll get into that when we get into chapter 1. It goes a bit between third person and first person, but a lot of the time, instead of narrating the events of he went over here, he walked there, it's going to be narrating it from the thought process of the individual. So smelling the bakery, thinking about the advertisements he's seeing, looking at a girl's rump, which does happen. And there's going to be two main characters in this book, Stefan Debalis and Leopold Bloom, which comes from Happy's Bloomsday. We'll get more into that when we get into the book as well. And for the book references and editions, I'm gonna really recommend this blue edition. I got it at Barnes & Noble, so it's pretty accessible. Also, funny thing, I always wondered why it's a solid blue cover. The first edition was just a bound by string blue binding on the book that had the whole manuscript. Actually, I saw a first edition that was signed at the International Book Fair, and it went for $150,000. Now in California, that might be a down payment, but in other places, that's a house. So, but the reason I recommend really getting this, because when I first bought Ulysses, I got this edition. I got it for a bit cheaper, and this one tries to be more faithful to the novel in a sense, because Ulysses is kind of like a play, and it kind of makes it in a play format. The problem is, look at these. One page is almost 2.5 pages, and even though it's only 200 pages, you really feel like you're getting nowhere. I stopped. It was so discouraging. I spent so much time on a page, and also I was a worse reader at that time. But what you're going to notice with Ulysses is that, for the actual book, even though it's 700 pages, the text page is not too bad compared to stuff like Don Quixote, or right now we're reading Leonark, 3 books, or even Brothers Karamazov. They have a much higher page density, which is kind of odd considering this is from the same time period. So, but this one, it just goes a lot faster. And again, I'm going to give the same advice for when you read Pynchon. is that if you don't understand something, just keep going. And especially Ulysses, one person said that it's okay to skip around, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. After I finished the book, I read that, and there was actually a chapter that I skipped because it was too difficult, and it stopped me in this rereading, and I didn't want to go through all the annotations. And I feel like I haven't missed that much. One, because I know the book, but two, you can always go back to it. Ulysses is not a plot-intensive story. It's very open. It's very, I don't want to say slice of life, but day to day. And actually, it takes place in the span of one day of 24 hours. But it's good to read it through all the way. But if you want to skip a chapter or come back to it later, I would say that's an option for you. I would say you can absolutely do that. Now, for reference materials, I am going to be using 2 books. Now, I haven't started using them because I found the first few chapters weren't as bad as I remember them to be. But I'm going to be using The Exiles of Jamesjoyce, which it looks big, and it is, but it's also referencing Dubliners and A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. So this is not all the comprehensive annotations of Ulysses. And the next one I'm going to be using is by Weldon Thornton, Allusions in Ulysses. And what you're going to see in this book that's really helpful is that it's going to have the page number, and it's going to have the sentence, and it's going to have the reference to what it's actually going for. So if there's something in the book that you don't get, like specific Irish politics like Fresnel, or a lot of the philosophers that Stephen de Ballas talks about, or even just some culture stuff in it, or when he goes to talk about different Irish folk heroes, this will be a good resource. I'm going to start using this to see if there's anything I missed. And I'm going to start using it when I get to the more difficult chapters. And also, it's good to get the blue one also because that one relates directly to the page count. So that way you can just look it up and you don't have to worry about version differences and everything. Now, just a little bit background and preview of Ulysses. There is a Jamesjoyce universe. His first book, Dubliners, and Portrait of Artist as a Young Man. In Dubliners, there are going to be some characters in Dubliners that show up in Ulysses. I don't remember all the characters. It's been a while since I read Dubliners. I read it when I was like 24. I'm going to be 29 this month. So, and then Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man is almost like the prequel to Ulysses in that it takes place going over the life of Stephen de Ballas and how he gets away from his religious teachings and eventually decides to go to college to be an artist. And Stephen de Ballas is actually a stand-in for James Joyce. He actually had a friend named Stephen as well, and I think his name was, I forget what his name was, but it was very similar to Stephen de Ballas, and Joyce kind of took him as a confidant because he was another author as well and would ask him very personal questions. But if you want to read those books before you get into Ulysses, you absolutely can, but given the first chapter, I'm going to provide some background context. It's not exactly necessary to do that. You'll get a little bit more out of it, but I'm going to provide that for you when the characters come up. And there's really just a handful of characters you really need to pay attention to. And that would be, Stephen de Ballas and his father as well, and just his mother and like some of the relatives as well. It's not as important, but if you just focus on the Ballas family and you understand that, then you can pretty much navigate your way through the book. Now, this is not going to be a comprehensive tell-all every aspect of Ulysses. As you saw with the 2 books I used, Ulysses is like Gravity's Rainbow. It's an endless book. You can spend your whole life analyzing it. It took Jamesjoyce well over a decade to write it. So just to condense that all into a YouTube channel, I'm going to give you more of the play-by-plays. And there might be some aspects I missed here or there. But again, this is not a 100% comprehensive overview. This is to help you get through the book and point out things that you're missing. Also, this book is really important to me. I read it in a time in my life where I was first living on my own, and I read the majority of the book in like a week. I read like 500 pages in a week, which is surprising for my slow ass in reading. But there's a lot of aspects when I read Jamesjoyce, I feel like I'm reading about my own personal fears, aspirations, on my own personal life as well. So I am gonna do the George Bataille thing where I'm gonna mix the objective with the subjective. So I'm gonna give you my subjective take on some stuff in the book. Now, I'm not gonna make that the core tenets of these videos, but it is gonna pop up there. Another thing too is that I'm not really gonna talk about much the allusions to the Odyssey, which is this book is based off of. Joyce saw Odysseus as Ulysses. Oh my god, see, this is why I'm also not gonna talk about it, as like the quintessential hero. The reason I'm not gonna do that is because 1, I haven't read the full text of the Odyssey, and 2, I feel like with culture osmosis and like reading paraphrase versions of it in high school, we all kind of have a general understanding of what's going on. Like, the average person might not know what the oxen of the sun is, and I don't actually remember, but we know Cyclops, the sirens, him getting close and then the waves pushing him back, and what happens at the end of Odyssey. So that's not something I'm really going to go into, and I don't think it's 100% necessary to recognize those illusions in this book, because this is not a hero's tale. It really is it's just a day in the life of Dublin. But if you want to get more out of that, you can definitely read it or read some cliff notes of the Odyssey. I'll mention it when I think it's necessary. Now, also, I do want to shout out another YouTube channel. I'm gonna put it the text at the bottom. I think his name is Richard Reich. I probably said it wrong, but I just found out he did a whole play-by-play on Ulysses as well, and I think it's just fair just to put that out there. What I'm trying to say is go towards whatever reference material you like to go to. And another thing, speaking of reference material, a lot of the illusions you can look up online. There's a lot of people have analyzed this text and have put up a lot of illusions and explanations online for Jamesjoyce. The reason I don't like that personally is the same reasons I haven't yet dived into the annotations, is because I don't like going back and forth on a book. When I'm reading a book, I like just to focus on the text. If I look something up online, then I want to look up another video or website, or it just kind of takes me out of the experience for a bit. But that's pretty much the purview of how we're going to address this. I'm hoping to finish this by the end of the year, and also, if anybody puts any questions in the comments section, I'll be more than happy to address them. But yeah, this is going to be a very fun exercise, and I'm hoping it will help you a lot in the future as well. I'm probably going to do one for Mason and Dixon maybe, but we're going to focus on this for right now. So look forward to reading Jamesjoyce with you, and best of luck.